I think. Okay. Hey there, I'm still making a video game, so I'm gonna keep telling you about it. I'm Zephylite, and in this devlog, I'm gonna show you the breakdown of the first death trap made for my sci-fi stealth action game, Homefront. We'll break down the trap's design, modeling, and engine implementation, as well as some challenges that it brought with it. Alright, let's get chopping. In Homefront, traps play a pivotal role in gameplay. The protagonist isn't capable of fighting hand to hand, and good luck finding any usable weaponry in this hellhole. The traps are usually the player's only means of eliminating their opponents. This means you'll have to get crafty and create your own tools of slaughter and subterfuge using whatever material you can get your hands on. I realized I would need a cohesive design philosophy to make sure each trap and device gets the amount of love they all deserve. I began compiling key ideals for each trap's form and function. We'll add them to this chart as we go over the process. When it came to figuring out which trap to start with, I decided to make one that would be effective against the first enemy type we had created, so I needed to make something that would be effective against our little meat box here. After a questionable series of Google searches for trap inspiration, I opted for a trap tall enough to hit a human center mass that flings a makeshift blade towards the target in range. This would be something that would work well against squishy opponents, but likely not as effective against something more mechanical. Thus began the process of figuring out how this device would look and operate. I began breaking down what physical components would be required, and came up with scrap materials that resembled these components. For instance, this trap needs something heavy and sharp for the slicing, likely something long and metallic. It also needs something that's sturdy enough to support the contraption, like chunks of wood. Lastly, to swing this blade around, it needs to be kept tight, ready to release. Something elastic, so possibly something made from rubber. Then, we compare these materials to commonly discarded household objects or scrap that would be found in dumps, landfills, or junkyards. Broken table legs and an old broom fits for the trap's support beams. If an object has multiple of these materials, even better. A broken bike tire has both a firm structure for a base, as well as the rubber to swing the trap. And finally, a rusted road sign is just the kind of hefty steel we need to get slicing. To rig these traps up, the protagonist brings with him plenty of basic tools and components like wires, breadboards, sensors, small power cells, and any additional minor mechanical pieces needed to activate the trap. It doesn't need to be physically realistic, but it has to sell its practicality in Homefront's universe. With the powers of garbage combined, I give you Swingy Sign Trap. Then came the tribulations of trying to animate this beast. At first, I began moving each object, keyframing it as accurately as I can to gravity and external forces. Also, the tightened rubber would need to actually appear loosened once the trap triggers. Otherwise, thus began the process of learning shape keys. I remembered Unity isn't the best at vertex animation, but is capable of utilizing an imported model's shape keys. By saving the vertices position of the rubber between a fully tensed and loosened state, it could then be blended along with the swinging animation. Looking sharp, or stretchy. So I slapped that bad boy into Unity, and that's when the problem started. Raw keyframed movement looks fine in Blender, but once it's exported into Unity, no movement at all. Apparently, this type of movement counts as vertex animation, which I remembered for a second time. Unity doesn't like it. No biggie, I guess I just need to rig the traps with armatures to move these pieces individually. After arduous weight painting and careful positioning, it's still broken. Turns out I'm dumb, and I never applied my scale to the meshes, so everything's painful to look at. If it's applied now, the object's positional data is fighting the rig data. On top of that, each piece is their own object, which means each of these have their own material, getting their own draw call every frame. The dread started to wash over me. Do I start over? How should I approach this? Why must it all fall apart in the transition? Why can't I just take what it looks like in Blender and put it in Unity? Enter center stage. Vertex animation tools. Fine. With this tool, I can export the trap's animation as a series of still captures, keeping all vertex movement and shape keys in the end result, and slap them into a mesh renderer that will step through each of the stills and play it like a 3D sprite sheet. This way, I can keep my quick and dirty modeling and animating methods, retain the exact shape of the model, and fire events based on the exposed property for the percentage of the animation that has been played. Since this tool exports each frame as a single mesh, I can smash all the parts together and map out to a single material and reduce draw calls. It's win-win-win. So after I slapped in the trap and spent way too long figuring out what the hell a mask map is, I got in the textured and animated swingy sign death trap in Unity. Now came the time to make it behave like a death trap. There's a small trigger zone in front of the trap that enemies can set off, which starts the animation. Once it's set off, I find the animation player percentage that matches the exact moment where the trap performs the kill, and plug it into the trap's update function. In order to help visualize the trap's trigger zone for the player, I've added 2 shaders that emit from the sensor box section of the model. There are 4 line renderers that lead from the sensor to the corners of the trigger, and a decal projector that overlays a grid pattern on the ground of the trigger zone. Both the decal and line renderers have their color change once the trap has been sprung. Once the trap has had its slicing event fire, it's time to cut up our target. I've downloaded Easy Slice to split meshes along a plane, filling in new faces with a bloody and fleshy material. These new meshes are given rigid bodies that apply a combination of forces to look more cinematic. With core systems in place for our trap, it's time to juice it up with extra effects to the kill shot. Or, kill swing. Once the slice occurs, the game's timescale slows down for a moment to see the chunks fly for a bit longer while accentuating the impact. I've added screen shake using Cinemachine's impulse components for a heavier thud on the trap. I've also added prefabs from an asset called volumetric blood fluids. It instantiates blood impacts at a matching angle of the slice. They fly out and cover any surface in its flight path. Delicious. Finally, it was time to figure out how this trap was going to sound. In Audacity, I layered a bunch of sounds ranging from metallic impacts, various whooshes, electric whirring and beeping, squishy giblets, and cinematic impacts. Compiled together, we have... Oh, come on, we can do more than that. We need it crunchier. Crunchier! Ooh, that's the stuff. And so, every piece in place, rigged and ready to go, let's put our trap into action. Terrific. And horrific. For now, that's a solid swinging sign I think we've got. The next devlog is about how I handle the material scavenging, the start of the inventory setup, and the process of creating the trap we just built in-game. I'll probably be getting these chunks out of me until the next devlog, so until then, take it easy out there.